Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny. I'm joined with Kenny Square. This is Sports on the Positive Tip, where we have conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. Kenny, the Mets have made a big change to their Saturday home games. All of their Saturday home games, at least through September, will be in the daytime now. Early in the season, 1 p.m., and through the summer, 4 p.m. Your thoughts?
That's kind of sounding like we're going to like the Cubs there. But I like it because like
Yeah.
Saturday night games are always hard to catch,
Yeah.
except for like when they're on Fox.
Yeah. I wonder how much they'll be on Fox because they won't be playing. I guess when they play on the road, they'll play Saturday nights, but the home games, I know Fox does like a 4 o'clock game and a 7 o'clock game. Um, Dan Quinn filled the last position. You were right about Belichick probably sitting out this year. Dan Quinn from the Cowboys via the Falcons. Does Dan Quinn have anything to prove? He's now the coach of the Commanders.
I mean, I think he's got to show that the defensive issues wasn't his fault.
Right.
So a little bit, but not a ton.
Well, I was thinking since he was coach of the Falcons when they totally collapsed against the Patriots.
Well, that too.
Yeah. All right. We got a lot more to talk about. We got a lot of football. Super Bowl is set. We've got the Knicks. We've got Wanda Franco. You ready to get this going?
Let's get into it.
Let's go. This episode of Sports on the Positive Tip is brought to you by the Tavern Coffee House. Attention, coffee lovers. Are you craving the perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Well, look no further than the Tavern Coffee House. It's located at 12302 Buckeye Road in Cleveland, Ohio. You can also check them out and order your coffee at thetaverncoffee.com. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, it looks like the Super Bowl is set. What is the Super Bowl 58?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You didn't sound too sure there. I always lose count. With the
Yeah,
Roman
like
numerals
just use
throws me off.
numbers. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's 58. I'm looking at it now.
58. Okay.
Just
Yeah.
use numbers. They used Super Bowl 50 because they didn't want to be like Super Bowl L. So
Yeah. I'd rather they lose. Man, 2 years from now will be Super Bowl 60. That's amazing. That there's been that many Super Bowls already. Um, let's start there with the championship games, and let's start in the AFC. We now have the match, right? We have the Chiefs and 49ers. This was 2020, right? Was the 49ers and Chiefs Super Bowl. Um,
yeah,
and we'll talk about that in a bit because I thought that was a great game and but the Chiefs, oh my gosh. Well, let me start here. Because you sent a really good question. What are we thinking of, first of all, of Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes? Why don't you go ahead and start?
can I start actually with the fact?
Yeah.
Um, so this Super Bowl is featuring two teams. One that hasn't won, or this championship is featuring two teams. Team that hasn't won in 29 years, and a team going for their third ring in 5 years. We're talking about this year's Super Bowl, the 2014 World Series, featuring also a team from San Francisco and Kansas City.
Wow,
Is
exactly
that
10
crazy?
years ago. That is crazy. That is great. That's right. The Giants and the Royals. That was the Madison Bumgarner World Series, man, for sure. Wow. Wow. So the 49ers haven't won the Super Bowl in 29 years?
Yep. They've only been well, with 2020 and then also 2012 with Kaepernick and on
So this,
Harbaugh.
this is like their third since 2012.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Wow. Seems like when in like the 80s and 90s, they were in the Super Bowl every year. It seemed like, that's hard to believe that's been that long, but the Cowboys are like that as well. So so go ahead.
All
Lamar
right.
Mahomes. Go ahead.
Well, I think Lamar Jackson is starting. I heard this comp, and I think it's an interesting one. Let me tell you what you think. Um, he's looking more and more like Joel Embiid, a very, very good regular season player, but can't seem to get it done in the playoffs.
Hmm.
Now, granted, and I'll talk about Mahomes in a second. Granted, like the Kansas City Chiefs are really difficult and challenging to beat. But this was supposed to be the year. The Chiefs offense had the most drop passes of any team in the NFL. Um, Mahomes hasn't looked fully Mahomesian as far as like his standards go. Lamar Jackson is probably going to be awarded the MVP next week. Um, it all seemed like everything was coming together. The Ravens also had the best scoring defense in the league, but yet they still couldn't get it done. So it's going to beg the question: will he ever be able to get it done? I mean, I'd have to look. There's got to be a short list of guys that have won multiple MVPs and have never made it to a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And Lamar Jackson might end up being part of that list.
Yeah.
So I think at this point, you have to look at it as they're a good team, but I can't trust them until they actually do it in the playoffs. The Bills are kind of going in that route too. Obviously, the Cowboys have been there for a minute, but yeah, it's just really hard because this was supposed to be his year. As far as Patrick Mahomes goes, he is showing time and time again that you cannot vote against this guy.
Yeah. Man, oh man.
This
Yeah.
to me is still the craziest stat. So he's been in the league 6 years, 6 playoff runs. You know, he's never lost in regulation to an AFC opponent.
Yeah. I mean, that's just great. So when they lost to the Bengals, that was in overtime, yes? Okay.
Yep. Bengals in overtime, and then also the Patriots back when Brady was still there.
Right. And that was when they beat the Pats beat the Rams, right? In the Super
Yeah.
Bowl. I don't even know what to say. I don't have words for Mahomes anymore. You know what I mean? Well, how much do you put on Lamar though? This this loss.
I mean, I think he made a couple of key mistakes late in the game.
Right.
But also part of it might just be that they coach the game weird
Yeah.
because the Ravens are more of a run first team.
Right.
Like that's Lamar Jackson's game. Is what makes him so unique is that he is an excellent rushing quarterback.
Right.
And yet, I think they said they only had like 6 rushes among their running backs, not including Lamar. Like, he is a pretty good thrower of the football. I think he's improved greatly from his rookie year, honestly, even from his first MVP season.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of went away from that.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of it still has to, you got to give a lot of credit to Kansas City. Their defense has been excellent this year, probably a little underrated. Travis Kelce shined in the biggest light, which like it gives you those Patriot flashbacks. Like Patriot fans hate the comparison of Mahomes to Brady.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on that trajectory. Obviously, things can change because you still have a very vaunted AFC. You got Burrow, you got Josh Allen, you got Lamar, CJ Stroud. Who knows if Trevor Lawrence is going to get there? Deshaun Watson, if he could get things together. So, like, there's a lot of guys there. I didn't even mention your boy Aaron Rodgers. Like, there's a whole gauntlet that you'll have to get through. So there's no guarantee that he'll get back. But what he's done so far, you got to give him a lot of credit for it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I I thought actually Lamar ran a little bit too much in this game. I thought that you nailed it. I think they didn't establish the run game, which has been an identity for them all year long. I thought that, he got out of that pocket and listen, he had well over 100 rushing yards, but I thought in a championship game like that was a little bit, too much. Here's where I take him a little bit off the hook, Kenny. I was so disappointed at the penalties of Baltimore. I mean, they had
Yeah.
some of the stupidest penalties that I've seen in a championship game. The unsportsmanlike conduct, the late hit to the head of Mahomes, okay, I want to purposely go offside, but I'm gonna knock the guy over as hard as I can, you know. And listen, they have probably the most aggressive defense in the NFL. They've always had a great defense. That's been their signature. But I mean, it just these penalties were crazy. And I don't fault Flowers so much for, the fumble. Right. I mean, I guess that's taught, right, to not dive from there because there's a good chance you'll lose the ball. But I give the Chiefs a lot of credit for knocking it out. Um, I don't know, the Mahomes interception there at the end, I'm not that's the only one I blame on him because I wasn't sure what he was doing. I mean, there were 3 KC defenders there. I mean, where was he trying to throw it at? You know, at that time, it just seemed like, it seemed like the Ravens, I guess it's the best way I could put it. This was just my point of view. It seemed like the Ravens were playing like a 4:30, you know, you and I now, you're on board with me on that. It seems like they were playing the Chiefs at 4:30 on an October Sunday afternoon as opposed to, you know, playing them in the championship game. It just didn't seem like a championship game type performance. And to the opposite end, you nailed it with Mahomes, Kelsey. These are guys that, you know, they knew what they were playing for. You know, I mean, the Ravens was certainly the best team all regular season, but how many times in how many sports have we seen the best team doesn't always win?
Yeah, and usually, especially when you're talking teams that have been there before,
Yeah,
like I feel like if the Ravens were to win this year, they had to do it from the number one seed.
yeah,
Or if Miami, I think the second they lost the division, that's when they had any hope gone.
yeah, yeah,
But like we saw it all the time, Golden State, when the cat, well, I think the Cavs might have been a number one seed, but like, I mean, in baseball, the top three teams, none of them won their first playoff series.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I, you know, I, I think right now it's Mahomes and everybody else. And you're right, he's getting to the Brady atmosphere. So is this the fourth Super Bowl in 6 years?
Yeah,
And the only one they lost was to Tom Brady, right? And Tampa. Um, so I think it's going to be a great game. But we'll, you know, we could save our picks actually till next week. Let's go to the other game because I honestly felt that's the same way about the Lions. I just like I love their coach, right? I love when Dan Campbell was in a press conference their first year and was, you know, coming to tears, you know, taking up on his players. And I remember Dan Campbell very clearly from, you know, his days with the Giants. Um, but I also felt like I know sometimes the saying is, "Hey, go with what got you there." But in the NFC Championship game, don't you gotta kick the field goal to tie it up? I'm just like and that's not a second guess. When they went for it, I'm like, "Why is he going for it?" They had a nice drive, get the points. It's then everything is equal, man, you know, and there's not that much time left, and the 49ers, you know, in the second half, they just couldn't stop them, but at least, you know, they give themselves a fighting chance if even if they score a touchdown, then they're a touchdown down. Um, and it gives you the boost of confidence. It stops the bleeding because they had scored all those points in a row. You know, and that didn't feel like a championship game decision. Your thoughts on Lions 49ers?
yeah, I think like because I know a lot of the whole analytics thing, especially when it's short, fourth and shorter. It's better to just take the fourth down and go for it.
Yeah,
But I think like kind of like how we say in baseball, where sometimes yes, the numbers tell you to do something, but your instincts say don't do it.
you nailed it. Yeah, yeah,
And I think like because also the going for the fourth down when you could have put yourself up by three scores, go up by 17 feels a lot different than losing it. And like football can be such a game of momentum, especially when you have a high powered offense like the San Francisco 49ers, where uh, a dunk and run for Christian McCaffrey could easily switch the game. So I think like I don't fault them too much for going for it because that is how they got there. That
yeah.
is part of their DNA. But there are times where you have to say, let's go against the grain and do what seems to be the right move here. And they definitely didn't do that.
Which is tie the game. So your question that you sent me in text was did the Lions blew it or do we give the 49ers credit? And I don't mean to sit on the fence, but I want to say both because I thought Brock Purdy was brilliant. I thought that he has just proven so much. I think out of all the quarterbacks, I mean, all this guy does is win, and but then oh, he can't run, but yet he made two of the biggest runs of the whole season, there in the fourth quarter. And he just, I mean, he was money in the pocket. I mean, he didn't lose uh any of his cool through that whole game, and so it's funny because he doesn't have the skills of Mahomes or Lamar or even Jared Goff, but this guy just wins. We used to say the same, you and I, about Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think Jimmy G will probably make a comeback somewhere if it's not with the Raiders. But I think that Purdy is the guy. It's funny because the 49ers had a couple of really good quarterbacks that they got rid of and handed the franchise over to him this year. And what a great decision that was. So I think that their comeback was masterful. Um, but I just think, I mean, here's the other thing with the Lions. I think they should have tied it at 27. I already said that. But I was shocked the second half from week one, after week one, when they beat the Chiefs, and I thought it was going to be a rematch, Um, I said, they're going to be dangerous all year because of those two running backs. There's no team in the league that comes close to having two guys like they have. Kenny, the first half, they were dominating. Those guys didn't hardly have any touches in the second half. It was like they got so far away from the running game, So I think combining that and then not kicking that field goal to tie it at 27, to me, those two, um, I think the Lions blew it. But if instead of standing on the fence, I'll say that I'm giving the 49ers more credit for just playing a brilliant second half.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it comes down to is like you've got to give the 49ers some credit. Brock Purdy obviously has had a lot, like a big chip on his shoulder. A lot of people calling him a systems quarterback and everything like that. But I think one of the biggest things that was missing from his resume so far has been exactly what we saw on Sunday. Being down big early in a game, can you bring the team back? Because there was a few times where once they were down, they're awful. And part of that is also a Shanahan thing. I believe they are 4-38 or something like that when they trail by 7, not even like 17. But like they don't really do well coming from behind anyway, but especially Brock Purdy. But I think he showed that he can actually do that. Yeah. And if you are a 49ers fan, you should be very excited because even if they don't beat Mahomes and the Chiefs on the Super Bowl, like you got to bring this guy back, obviously.
Yeah.
Also, I had sent this to you, the classic draft of 2018, where you have Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, who obviously was a bust. Sam Darnold's the first one to go to a Super Bowl.
Sam Darnold's dancing all the way to Las Vegas, man. Wow. All right, so we'll break it down a little bit more next week, but just on the surface, your quick hit, who do you like?
I don't know if I can go against Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Yeah. These two teams match up really well, they both have, great offenses. And I mean, the 49ers have 2 or 3 stars on defense. And but the Chiefs, no slouch on defense at all. So I think this is going to be a great Super Bowl. I know last year was what, 38-35, something like that was the score last year. I'm expecting something like that, this year, 31-28, something like that. I think it's just going to be a close game. But right now, I mean, something might change between now and next week, but I'm with you, man. I can't go against the Chiefs. I mean, I think, we don't often get to see dynasties in this day and age. Like, how long has it been again in baseball? Over 20 years, right? Since somebody's repeated?
Yeah, last repeat would be I was gonna say 2001, I wish. 2008.
Yeah. And how about in basketball, NBA?
Repeat would be Golden State.
Golden State,
so
right?
Be 18-19.
Okay. So not too long ago, because Now, we've seen them. They were a dynasty. The Patriots we've seen as a dynasty. And again, the Patriots didn't peel off like three in a row. They would get somebody would pick them off in the playoffs, the Colts or the Ravens, I remember one time did. But but it wasn't, you didn't go like 2, 3 years without them going back to the Super Bowl during that era. I mean, they went there 9 times. And I'm old enough to remember the Steelers in the 70s and talked about the Cowboys last week, how while they weren't like considered a dynasty, it seems like they were in the Super Bowl every year, back then. And they lost quite a few, but they won quite a few too, the 49ers. I think the Chiefs are gonna be in that stratosphere, man. If they keep going, if they win this one, oh my gosh. I mean, and where do you put Andy Reid? Do you start to even say that Andy Reid might be near Belichick? I don't know.
Well, that'll be a very interesting topic
Yeah,
to start looking at because, well, and also we'll talk coaching in a sec, but Belichick isn't going anywhere right now.
yeah,
You look at Andy Reid's record without Mahomes versus Belichick's record without Brady. Andy
yeah.
Reid, like, I mean, McNabb wasn't, he's not a Hall of Famer, but he's a pretty good
Very
quarterback.
good quarterback. Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. And he did go to the playoffs a couple of times with Alex Smith, and Alex Smith was very good before he got hurt, of course. Um, But I mean, you think about that, and they always applaud his decision because Alex Smith was still playing extremely well at a pretty high level when he benched him for Mahomes. And once Mahomes got in, it was like there was no looking back. We can talk more about that as well next week. I think Andy Reid has done it with two teams. He didn't win the championship with the Eagles, but they were really good for a long time, and he did get them to a Super Bowl. Um, let's jump to basketball. And there's only one topic for us. So we know we have people that listen to this from all over the place, but and you're in Cleveland, and I'm still here in New York. I've been a Knicks fan since I was a little guy. You've been a Knicks fan since you've been a little guy, and we have suffered, man. We have gone through the ringer. And listen, there's a lot of basketball to be played, but the Knicks are in third place in the Eastern Conference right now, 31-17. And at the beginning of the year, I said, get to 50. 50 is that magic number for me. I don't know where that would line them up. It will probably line them at either number 3 or number 4 seed, at the least in this conference. But what are you seeing here? What's been the difference? There is it 16-2 or 14-2 in their last since they got Adenabi.
I want to say 14-2,
Fourteen
but
and
I
two,
could have
probably,
that wrong.
right? And they've won now what, 8 in a row, I think. They've won
Yep.
8 in a row. Um, what's been the difference here? Because they were playing good, but they had just went through that 3-game losing streak where they were giving up so many points. They lost to Orlando, OKC, and I mean it wasn't even close. Dallas. What's been your difference here?
I mean, the easy thing would be OG Anunoby and adding him to the mix. But I feel like there's been a few different things. Well, I'll just ask you straight up. Do you know who led the NBA in three-pointers made in the month of January?
Huh. I don't.
It's not Steph Curry because that's usually the
Yeah.
the guess.
I mean, that would be the guess.
Dante Vincenzo,
Dante had the most 3-pointers. Dante's
most
Inferno,
three-pointers.
man. Wow.
What was it, 9 or 8 a couple days ago?
Yeah, he scored 33 points. I mean, he's been great since they put him in the starting lineup. You know, but there's a lot. So go ahead. What have you seen that has been the big difference from the early part of the year till now?
Like, I feel like there's been a little bit more consistency up top with just everyone. Like, I feel like you've been getting more consistent play from Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. Like, Brunson's been great all year. Should have been an all-star starter. We're not going to go there right
Right.
now. Sometimes I hate fans voting,
Yeah.
um, but like it seems like because last year I feel like one of the biggest issues was Jalen Brunson isn't scoring 40 points. The Knicks are going to lose the game. I don't really have a stat to go with that. That's just kind of the
Mhm,
feel that I get.
mhm.
But it seems like a lot of other guys have kind of shared the ball. And like they're like you just said, Dante had 33 a couple days ago. Julius Randle's had his moments. Um, and I feel like also they've really made a stronger commitment towards defense. And also, like, there's been times where every single time someone comes to Madison Square Garden, they're dropping 58, right? Like, I think
Yeah,
of like Kobe had his big game there. LeBron, one of his
yeah,
biggest games of his career, have been there.
yeah.
Hasn't happened at Madison Square Garden recently, just saying.
Oh, man,
Um,
we're winning at home, man. They really are.
so I think it's a few things. I think first, like, yes, their defense has been great. I feel like their offense has become a little bit more fluid. Um, but I think they're just like I feel like they're much more of a cohesive unit. And they're kind of I feel like they're getting that good rotation, that good balance.
Yeah.
Um, if I'm any of the other teams in the East, I don't want to play them at all.
Oh,
Uh,
oh, yeah. Yeah.
and and also their style of basketball is going to play so much better in the playoffs when you're not getting to get to the free throw line as often because you're not getting your whistles, and also like defense tends to shine. Uh,
Mhm,
let's see here.
mhm.
I don't know if I can find it readily, but like they're up there in all of the defensive metrics, and I think by leading through that, that's where you have some of the other stuff going.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
is it weird to think though that maybe did we overvalue RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly?
You took the words out of my mouth. I'm just wondering also, um, I'm wondering was there and I can't imagine that with quickly, but I'm wondering was there any strife behind the scenes because this team also seems to just really play well together now and seem to really get along well. Even in the 2 losses that they've had in this stretch, they just seem to bounce right back. I mean, I don't know, man. That's a really, really good question. I don't know. I like to think it's just OG has just fits in better, I think, with this group of players than RJ and Emmanuel.
Yeah, and I think that's very possible. And I did double check 14-2
14 and 2.
um in the month of January here.
Yeah.
So
It's amazing. Yeah. And that's been, I think, if I heard Mike Breen right the other night, that's their best month ever. And
wow.
you're talking about some championship teams and I imagine it probably was over the course of a couple of months. That can't be right because I remember in their 1970 year, I think they won 19 in a row. I think that's still their team record. So I don't know if that's accurate. Maybe he said that it's their best month since. More than likely. Let me say this. There's no Quentin Grimes, I'm not down on him, but he's the only player I could think of right now in their rotation that to me hasn't played up to his expectations this year. He had some stretches where he was doing well. Um, but when I think about the other guys, McBride, Josh Hart, Hartenstein, Precious, I mean, these guys are all playing such a key role when they come in. And I mean, were you surprised these last, listen, Charlotte has a lot of issues, right? Um, but Utah is established themselves as a pretty good team. Were you surprised that without not just without Julius, but without OG as well, that they played this well the last 2 nights?
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to bring up is like um also it seems like in years past if RJ Barrett was out, if Julius Randle was out, they had no shot.
Yeah,
Or if like they played but you could tell they were hurt, no shot. But it seems like they haven't really missed a beat.
yeah,
Like yeah, they're not like they gave up over 100 points, which they still don't really do that often.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but like it seems like they're right there.
yeah. I mean, they grind through games, and you sometimes it seems like mid third quarter is where they just take off. These games haven't even been close. I mean, I think we opened our last podcast by me asking you, "Hey, are you gonna be watching the Knicks in Denver tonight?" And so it was obviously last week, they just took Denver apart. And they're the champs. Now, listen, Denver didn't play the way Denver would play, right? But you got to give the Knicks part of that credit. They took them right out of their game early. And that was one of those games that they were leading right from the beginning and never looked back. I mean, we haven't seen or tasted this in a long time. You and I have lived through the Steve Francis, Stephon Marbury, Phil Jackson bringing in all of these coaches. You know, what was it Tisdale, right? David Tisdale,
Oh yeah, Fizdale.
Fizdale. Yeah, I'm even forgetting his name. I mean, I, I just this is fun to watch, man.
Yeah, and this is going to be an interesting question. So, do you do anything at the trade deadline at this point?
Listen, if you can add a Malcolm Brogdon and to be a backup, shooting guard, and maybe you give up Quentin Grimes, I'm doing that. There's another name that's been floated around. It's gone in and out of my head that I thought would be Bruce Brown, and I would consider him for a couple of reasons. I I always thought he was a pretty bright spot on the Nets on those teams that were a little dysfunctional. He always seemed to play extremely well against the Knicks, especially. But the guy played a key role. I mean, he made some big shots all throughout the playoffs last year, including in the finals. And so, he's got a ring. I was surprised that Denver didn't keep him. Um, if you could get either one of those guys and not give up a lot, I would do it. I'm not breaking this team up though for a star. I don't think a star is going to be available anyway. Unless you think Zach LaVine is a star. I know there's rumor that he's going to Detroit, but
Oof, that's even worse for him.
yeah, I'm not. I mean, why would you mess with this right now? I would just add a piece without really. I'd tinker. Now here's our next question though, and I'll ask it to you first. Can they get to the finals? Can they? I mean, we're jumping ahead of ourselves, but let's just say they stay in this number 3 spot. I mean, can they take on the Bucks in a 7-game series or the Celtics in a 7-game series?
I don't know. Because I'm trying to. I was looking at the standings here. So right now, the way that it would be constituted, let's just kind of go chalk a little bit. So they'd
Yeah.
face Indiana in the first round,
Right. The
be the
3-6, right?
3-6, and then they'd face Milwaukee,
Right.
who they've played Milwaukee pretty well. They've played them a
Right.
billion times too, and then they would face the Celtics.
Right.
I think still right now their ceiling could be the Eastern Conference Finals. In the NBA, it's hard to go from second round to finals, but it does happen. And
Yeah.
I think especially nowadays. I mean, I had said it before. I think that if the season started in January, this team would be either a top or a second team. I
Yeah.
mean, they've had the best record in January. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I could see it. I I think the biggest thing is how long can they continue? Like obviously 14-2. If they could go 14-2 the rest of like every month the rest of the way, great. This team's going to the finals.
Right.
But like if coming back down to earth still means like a 10-4 monthly record, I think they have a really good shot.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think what's going to be interesting in both conferences is, when you look at the West, the teams with the best records now still are Minnesota and OKC, but they don't have a ton of playoff experience. So when it gets into, April, May, June, could they beat any one of those teams, beat Denver or the Clippers? Um, I'm not so sure, even though they'll probably go in with the best record. Um, the East is really it's 3 teams I would say that are battle tested in the playoffs, and that would be the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Heat. And I mean, I'd match up the Knicks with the Heat now any day. And that I'm not saying they're not a dangerous team, and somehow they just wake up in like April and May the last few years, um, and all of a sudden find themselves in the finals. But I'm with you. I don't know that the Bucks are that much better than the Knicks. Listen, they've got two of the all-time greats, right? With Lillard and with Giannis. But I mean, if you start to match up everybody else, you know, I think the Knicks might have a little bit of an advantage there. Celtics, I'm not so sure. Can the Knicks beat the Celtics in a 7-game series? I suppose they could, but the Celtics are really good. Um, and but it's still such a long way to go. Unfortunately, injuries can happen and stuff like that. I mean, look, Knicks lost Julius Randle for a while. Thank goodness it's not going to be for months. But if one of the stars on the Celtics went down, it's a whole different ball game. You know,
Yeah, and I mean, let's say things start to go down south very quickly. Like, would you be that surprised? I mean, their coach hasn't been that great, right? I
uh,
mean, I guess they do have the best record in the NBA. So
who are you talking about? The Celtics now?
yeah,
Yeah. No, I think they'll be stable for a while. I think they're going to stick with that coach, but because Brad Stevens doesn't strike me as the guy, the GM that's going to, pull a lot of moves. But again, I think a lot on the trade deadline is going to, do the Celtics add a couple of pieces that make you say, "Oh my gosh!" Like if they bring Malcolm Brogdon back, or if they add Bruce Brown, you know what I mean? I just, then you're like, "Wow." I don't know if is there a poor team, and there's several poor teams, but there's no real big difference makers on those teams, right? Kyle Kuzma, maybe on
uh,
Washington might be the best out of the lot. Would he make a difference between you getting to semifinals and then going to the conference final? I don't know. I don't know.
well, there was one. I mean, this was kind of just a thrown out one, but I don't know if you saw LeBron's hourglass emoji.
Yeah.
People like he was doing like the
Yeah.
time is running out emoji.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people were like, "Oh well, I wonder if LeBron would be available." Everyone kind of says that. I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Yeah.
Um,
It'd have to be him, right? It would have at this point in his career, if the Lakers said, "Hey, we just traded you to Chicago," you think he'd go? You know what I mean? He's not,
right.
it would have to be him that says, "Hey, I want to get traded," and he would probably dictate the team that he'd want to go to, is my guess, you know? Um,
Yeah. Oh, probably another one. Deontay Dejounte Murray, the
yeah,
guy on the
yeah, that's a good
Falcons,
one.
well,
Yeah.
Hawks.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
could be an option.
Well, do the Hawks break that up and also think about trading Trey Young now? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's not working for the Hawks anymore. I mean, their window closed actually kind of fast this last year and a half. They looked like they were, headed towards conference final, type team every year for a while there. The year they beat the Knicks, for sure. But that's an interesting one. Those two guys would be difference makers. I agree. But I'm not sure there's many of those guys out there. OKC is not getting rid of any of their young players. Why would they? So um, it's going to be interesting. It really is. But this is so much fun. Go ahead.
Uh, this is another one of those. This would never happen. But what if Steph Curry's done being in Golden State?
Huh? Yeah. Uh,
Or they're like, we need to really kind of blow this up. Let's trade Klay Thompson.
that's much more likely, I think, right? Because I think Clay is a free agent at the end of the year. And do they plan on bringing him back, or are they like, we now need to rebuild this dynasty, that we had. Um, I don't know, teams. We'll say this last thing, and then we'll move on to Wanda Franco. It's hard for a team like Golden State to make that decision. It really is. You really have to. I mean, I think we see it now with the Patriots that they probably lasted a little bit too long. I think they thought that the group that they had after Tom Brady was still going to do well for them. And that first year they did okay. But would they have been better served peeling off some of those veterans and getting draft picks and starting over at that point? Um, look at Toronto. They won the championship, but then they lost Kawhi. So their chances of winning a second one without him was probably diminished. But they were still very competitive for the next couple of years. They got deep into the playoffs. They still had some good players, but there was a point in the last year when they let Van Fleet go through free agency that they said, you know, this is probably it for us in this run. Let's retool and let's start another run. When does Golden State make that decision? I don't know, man. It's hard when you've won multiple ones like that. See, for Toronto, they won the one. That's great. You know, the fans are still coming out. Now we've got RJ, we've got some guys now we can build around. Let's get some draft picks and let's retool and let's start this thing over. I don't know if the Warriors want to do that. They'd probably lose Steve Kerr, you know, but would they peel off Thompson though if they feel like they have no shot, you know, this year? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it would also be hard because I feel like the first I agree. Like I feel like a lot of times dynasties think they're going to last longer than they are,
Yeah,
and so as a result, you kind of get into like where the Warriors are now,
yeah,
where they're kind of in like the
yeah,
we stink, but we also have guys that we don't want to just get rid of.
yeah,
I will credit the Patriots were always good at that. Like, wait, why are you getting rid of Wes Welker? He's still good, and then like would do nothing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I feel like also if you get rid of Clay before you get rid of Draymond, that would be weird.
yeah,
But also,
yeah.
I don't know if Draymond would make very much of a different team.
I don't know. Draymond's still a very good player if he keeps his emotions under control, you know. Hey, last quick thing I'll say on this side. This is a good topic. Um, the Braves, I want to give them a lot of credit because the Braves when was the last time the Braves had like 2 or 3 bad years in a row. You know, it's been a long, long time. And I just remember, and I want to say it was probably Fred McGriff. Um, they chose not to sign him or they traded him. I think they chose just not to sign him. And their GM at the time said, it's my job to make sure we don't grow too old or too rich together, you know, and that's a balancing act, you know, because eventually, you know, like the Indians of the 90s and, you know, some other teams where they've locked up their young players at least for a while, the Braves now, you know, eventually though that runs out. You know, now the Indians of that era were very good every year and went to the playoffs and went deep into the playoffs, went to the World Series a couple of times. But eventually they had to make a decision and say, you know, Manny Ramirez, we've had him for 8 years, you know, time to let him go. Jim Tomei, you know, time to let him go. And so it's hard if you wait too long, if you wait a year too long, then you're stuck in the rut for a long time. And I have a feeling like Golden State is already waiting a little bit too long, you know. With I think Curry still can play at a high level. I'm not so sure about Thompson or Green anymore. You know, very good, serviceable players, not superstars the way they were a few years ago.
I totally agree. I think
Yeah,
they're good, but
yeah.
also like, okay, so they Clay Thompson going to Philly. Is that really gonna like put them over the top?
Well,
Probably not.
no, not in Philly, but Klay Thompson going to the Celtics. Let's say, you know, you'd have to put him on the Celtics or the Bucks. Probably not the Bucks because it's the same position as Lillard. But a guy coming off the bench like him on, you know, a top team in the conference, you have him bring him off the bench with the Celtics. I mean, you'll see a little bit of a rebirth with him, man. You know, he'll hit some key shots in the playoffs. I think. You know, all right, let's jump over to this horrible story of Wanda Franco. We didn't get to it last week. You had sent me. Um, they have a lot on him. They've got text messages. They've got a lot of stuff on him, and so let me just say where it's at, and then I just want to hear your opinion. And I'm sure it's the same as mine. He got involved with this young. I mean, this young lady was 14, and I think it's 15 now. And
Yep.
I'm forgetting from the article that she's not in school now. They have her somewhere hidden or something like that, right? But when he had a chance to kind of say, okay, I made a mistake here or there, he sends her text messages saying, hey, this could mess me up. I don't regret a thing. This was great for both of us, but this could mess me up. The mom gets involved. You would think the mom's first call would be to the authorities. Her mom's first call is to him, give me money. And it was hard for me to figure out the translations, but it was a lot of money every month that he was paying her. He was paying the young lady as well as the mom. And when you're 14, 15, you can't really decipher. You have all this money all of a sudden. You know what I mean? You can't really decipher, hey, this is coming from a bad place. When you're in her 40s, like because her mother is, she should know better. And it just became like this snowballing story for him. And then he lies to the police first time around, doesn't show up, when they have a warrant out for him. And now he's trying to get his full contract from, Tampa Bay. I think he now is coming to the realization he's got no shot at playing in the major leagues, I don't think, again, because I didn't get the feeling from that article he's interested in clearing his name, or he's interested trying to say, I'm innocent now. He did release a statement one time that, hey, people talk and they don't know what they're talking about. But I guess at that moment, he didn't see all the evidence that the authorities have on him. So what were your thoughts after you read that article, which was pretty in detail?
Um, well, I remember when we had first been texting about it, we kind of said the same thing. Both Wander Franco and this mom are both horrible people. Um,
Yeah.
and I think just like hearing some of the how this girl's mom would exploit her for a whole bunch of different things, whether it was her sexually, which is awful, but also her mom's partner, she would use her as like, oh, I have this daughter that doesn't eat, so you need to give me money. Absolutely. Um, and it is really hard to see because also I think one of the biggest things, and this is like one of those hardcore 30 for 30 things that we'll see in like 10, 15 years. But like, why? You have everything going for you your way. Like, if you were to ask people who is the top, who are like the top 5 players in Major League Baseball under the age of 25, I'm sure Wander Franco would be on all of those lists.
Yeah.
Or most of them, because some people are dumb.
Yeah.
But like, he had everything going for him. He had a 12-year contract worth over $200 million secured in the bag for him. Like, he'd be set for life. And yet he still thinks it was all worth it to risk it all for a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to shame the girl when I say that, but like, you're willing to put your career on the line to have a relationship with someone that you know you're not supposed to have a relationship with.
Yeah.
And like, I think just the level of controlling and domineering that was probably happening with him is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
Because like, there was the whole story where he was doing his job as a Major League Baseball player, and then he finds out that like she was like going out with a guy probably about her age.
Yeah.
And he just went crazy and said like, you're the only like, I'm the only person that can actually provide for you, blah blah blah.
Jealous of a
Yeah, if you were.
15-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, like, come on. First of all, you're a Major League Baseball player. Most people, especially in the DR, would love to be a Major League Baseball player. And not only are you a Major League Baseball player, but like, you're a top high budding star. But it really does just go to show you, first of all, you need to have, I think for any athlete, but also for people in general, you need those people around you that can keep you grounded, that can keep you accountable.
Yeah.
Because especially when you have a sense of authority, so many people take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And yes, you could give as much money, like he gave between the girl and her mom, like
A lot of money. Yeah.
about maybe over $1 million.
Yeah.
Like in US dollars. I know a lot more in pesos, but like, you have all of that authority. You have to use it to the right ability. I
Yeah.
mean, we're both pastors and we understand that like we like whatever, whether you are a pastor, whether you're um, a manager in random organization, whatever your position might be, if you're in a position of power, you have to take it very, very seriously
Yeah.
because so often people will corrupt it. Like that's where like all the sexual harassment stuff comes from in
Yeah.
corporate America.
Yeah.
But even besides that, like people will listen to you in a different light. You have to take it seriously.
Yeah. I don't have much to add, Ken. I think the only thing I'll add is, well, two quick things. This comes too close after seeing the Sounds of Freedom movie and really my eyes being a lot more open. They were open before, but a lot more open to child sex trafficking. And I'm not saying that Franco, is a child sex trafficker, but he's a predator, and gosh, that's just as bad, right? But for the mom then to allow it after she knows about it, her first call, only call, should have been to the authorities and to have him arrested. But yet she goes along with it, for months. And it just, that's just sickening to me. And the last thing I'll say is if God forbid, someone approached me when any of your sisters were young, 12, 13, 14, and said, "Hey, I'll give you $1 million. Keep this quiet. I'm with your daughter." I don't want your $1 million. You're going to jail. You know what I mean? And it just, to have that opposite reaction the way she did. And listen, I know people are desperate for money. I totally get it, but nobody's that desperate. I'm sorry. You're her mother. You ruined this young lady for life. She's not going to forget this. Hopefully she gets prayer, therapy, whatever it is that she needs to get past it and live a life. But you think she'll have a relationship with her mother? Probably not, so listen, Wanda Franco, unfortunately, he's going to be a footnote here. 5 years from now, we're going to forget his name. People are going to be like, Wanda who? Um, just like who's the shortstop for the Cubs in their championship? Addison Russell. Oh, that's right. Totally forgot about him. You know what I mean? Um, and listen, nobody has signed Trevor Bauer yet, unfortunately, right? I shouldn't say unfortunately. Unfortunately for him, nobody has signed him yet. But listen, 5 years from now, if he never plays in the major leagues again, nobody's going to remember Trevor Bauer, you know. But Franco, his name is going to just kind of be an afterthought, unfortunately. So, all right. So with that, it is time for us to go to some inspiration, right? We really need it.
Yeah.
After that topic. All right. I got, I stumbled across this accidentally. I started to do Brock Purdy, and I don't know if you have him or not as inspiration, because I know you called him Mr. Irrelevant. Wasn't that his nickname? I think Brock
Yeah.
Purdy, um, but I'm gonna, in case, Dave Canales is the new head coach. Now, a lot of these head coaches we've never heard of, right? Because the assistant coaches don't get any publicity, but he's the new head coach for the Carolina Panthers. Good luck there. Hopefully he'll do a good job. But I ran across this article about him that I wouldn't have been aware because I didn't know him. I'm just gonna read it real quick. New Panthers head coach Dave Canales reveals scandalous details about his infidelity, pornography addiction, and binge drinking in a book he co-authored with his wife 16 months before earning his first head coaching gig. Canales and his wife, Lizzie, penned a faith-based book, This Marriage, The Question That Changed Everything. This Marriage, a question, This Marriage, the question that changed everything, that revealed how he overcame past addictions. The 42-year-old said he no longer drinks, is no longer addicted to pornography, and his wife detailed how their Christian roots helped them save their marriage and family. I was living a secret life, Canales wrote, according to the Charlotte Observer. No matter how hard I tried going to church, reading my Bible, and praying, I always had a secret dark place that was just mine. Canales published the book in September 2022 when he was still a position coach with the Seattle Seahawks and before he got his big break in 2023 when he became offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Bucks. The couple said they wrote the book to help other couples struggling with marriage. We wanted other people to feel safe, starting this journey towards a vibrant marriage by helping them see that they are not alone, the couple wrote in the book's preface. They also wrote the foreword, and it says, "Welcome to our mess, and the beautiful way that God has worked all things together for us." The couple said writing the book and reliving the painful details of the past was like going through another round of counseling, but it helped them find renewed healing and hope through a stronger understanding of what happened. The Panthers say they were aware of the book before they hired Canales. A spokesman said he would not be available for comment until his introductory news conference in Charlotte on Thursday, which I think is today. His introductory news conference. We we often get this perception. What I liked about this was that we get this perception that, people out following God have these perfect lives now. No, we still struggle with stuff, and we need to be able to talk about that in an open forum. And for him now to have the forum of being a head coach in the NFL, and I'm sure it sounds like he'll be open about it because he has been in the past, I think is great. I'm glad that he's gotten past, some of his problems. But I thought that it was great to hear this young head coach kind of start his coaching career by not running away. I know he had already wrote this book about 16 months ago, but I also want to give Carolina some credit because they still hired him, right? Knowing that he wrote this book and it's talking about God and religion, and they didn't run from it. They said this guy's going to be a really good coach. And so anyway, Dave Canales, I think I pronounced his name right, is inspiration for today for me.
That's a good one. And I hope he stays there in Carolina. They've had a lot of weird head
Oh,
coaching stuff the last couple of
you
years.
get
So,
fired at midseason.
oh
God,
gosh.
hope not.
Um, well, I was gonna go with another story, a little Super Bowl related, but I'm gonna hold off till next week because I saw a very interesting tweet. Um, and this has to do with Ravens tight end Mark Andrews, who had kind of a remarkable comeback. He was considered down and out, came back for the Chiefs game, obviously didn't win. But I think to some extent, maybe it's good that he didn't win because listen to this. During a flight from Baltimore to Phoenix, a woman suffered a medical emergency, and medical personnel on the flight couldn't find a strong pulse. Andrews, who is type 1 diabetic, got up from his seat and said, "Could it be her blood sugar? I have a diabetic testing kit." Andrews gave them this kit to use, and her heart rate was stabilized. Paramedics were able to treat her when the flight landed, and it seems like she's going to make a full recovery.
Wow. Wow.
And shout out to Mark Andrews. Awesome guy. He's one of those guys that a lot of people seem to really like in the NFL too.
Yeah.
But I also ask, I wonder, what if the Ravens won the Super Bowl, would he still be on that flight?
If he hadn't been on that flight. Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's remarkable. Wow. It's these stories like that need to be in the news. We have to sometimes we find them by accident. That is a great story. Wow. God bless. Thank God that lady's okay.
Yeah, and I didn't know about this story. I was just looking at Twitter because I like to check to see if there's any crazy news that we have to do. And I'm like, oh wow,
yeah,
Mark Andrews saved this girl's life. That's crazy.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. All right. That's a great one, man. All right. Good show today. We got a lot to talk about next week, man. Super Bowl coming up. And we'll talk a little bit of baseball too next week, yes?
Pitchers and catchers are reporting less than 2 weeks now.
Yeah, you said maybe we do a little mini sneak peek, mini baseball preview.
Yeah, and maybe just maybe we'll give our teams a grade on their offseason.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with that. The Mets assigned a guy, Jake Dirkman from Tampa. So I think they're getting some depth in that bullpen, man. They signed 1 million guys for the bullpen. But I can only name a few of them. I do know Dirkman. He's been left-hander around for a little while. So we'll see. You probably know him too because they face the Yankees so much. All right. Take us home.
All right. This is Kenny Squared Man.
Kenny.
It's Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely.